morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a new week. Kids are back to school. It is on for the next phase of our lives, moving back to real life, right? All right, so I had a question yesterday or a couple of days ago about somebody in Michigan that was asking about some of the weather moving in with some of these low pressure systems going on. Wondering if severe weather was possible across the north. Not really severe weather, but as far as snow weather, definitely possible across this region. So I got this pulled up for you. This is around, we're looking at the 5th right now of March when we start to see that low pressure system move in. Got some rain and snow mix, but we also have some, just before this, you can see that rain and snow mix actually a little bit. So we got some rain showers and some storms that are kind of brewing up here in the northern Ohio Valley going into the Great Lakes region. A lot of that snow and rain mix is definitely possible through this region. You can see those reds and those blues up here. That's all snow and rain mix and kind of like sleet and freezing rain. Eventually, once that low gets closer, you gotta get this, kind of cold area of, up here in the north here. It's gonna turn that rain eventually into snow, where you're getting some of that freezing rain mix right now, right there. So you can see that rain, and then eventually, once it moves into that area of Michigan and the Wisconsin area, Great Lakes, turns into freezing rain, and then eventually into this region here, it turns into snow. All right, so definitely all those issues. All right, so anytime you get freezing rain and rain and snow mix, cold air moves in, low pressure moves in there, and that's what happens, causes ice. So, make sure that you are careful on the roads out there, as some of those conditions can be kind of hazardous with that ice on there. Could make the morning commute kind of difficult. So please be safe and be careful. All right, so going into the 5th, now we start to see this low pressure system here that was moving from the west, kind of swings off into this area. Now this low pressure system to the north a little bit, there is one that moves in, and this thing's got kind of like a little bit of a land cyclone kind of thing going on. And so it kind of gets everything kind of spinning up with those westerlies, and there is a front that's going to be attributed with it too as well. It's going to have a cold front behind this line of storms that's picking up. Now you're going to see a first initial line of storms right here. These are going to be subsevere. Just general thunderstorms, torrential rainfall, probably a couple, rumbles of thunder and lightning here and there. Not a whole lot of severe risk with those. All right, but then this low pressure system, it moves in, and it moves into about this region here where Missouri is, and that storm is pretty much right on top of that. You know what I mean? And that's really the case right here. So you see in Oklahoma start to get marginal tornado risk here. I think that this is going to be relatively on the low side because these storms, they're just getting started. They're trying to build, they're trying to organize. So at this point, as far west as they are, they're not exactly in the wet sector here yet. So I think it's a little bit still too dry, and then the caps aren't really breaking. They're kind of holding out until they get into these further sectors. You can see that cap there. I mean, it might be broken a little bit, but it's still pretty tight, and getting a little bit of that moisture that's going on up in there. So we do have some moist areas, but it's not really there yet. It's just getting kind of going here. It's starting to develop, starting to really gather its strength and its organization. And then once we get to about the Arkansas line right here, then those caps start to break. You start to see that big boost in heat and moisture going up here, and I will show you the reason for that in tropical tidbits in here in a minute, because there's a couple of models here that I was looking at where I found some interesting things. So we do have a tornado risk going across Arkansas, even maybe in some of the lower southern portions of Missouri, where we have marginal tornado risk, severe thunderstorm risk. All right, so some of those areas here, because what happens is that low pressure system, like I said, right around Missouri, sticks right on there going into the Ohio Valley. You had this whole line of storms stretching pretty much all the way from the Great Lakes region all the way down into central Texas. All right, so, and where most of this to the north is just general thunderstorms and rain, marginal severe risk with these, not a whole lot of tornado potential, just maybe a couple of damaging winds here and there. Some thunder, lightning, torrential rainfall, which is, consequently going to cause some flooding, some travel, issues as well with that and things like that. So some damaging winds could be attributed with some of these storms, but for the most part, marginal severe risk. Not a whole lot of potential on some of the tornado risk. Now, some of these areas, later on getting into the Ohio Valley, some of these areas have marginal tornado risk. So across these areas, I will say that a brief spin up tornado or two, can't be ruled out going across these areas as it kind of comes through, just because we have this big squall line of storms. And there's a lot of variables in the GFS right now as far as this is out, where it's not really predictable here. We could have some embedded cells in here. You know what I mean? If we have some embedded supercells along this line, that means embedded tornadoes could be in here, mostly to the southern regions. And structures like these, and these storm structures, usually the biggest supercell potential and tornado potential is usually at the southern end of these storms. Just kind of on that southern tip, especially down here where it's much wetter, it's much warmer, and you're getting that, that southerly flow from the warm advection as well as the westerlies coming in from the front being here. All right, so this is the groundbreaking rotation down here. All right, but up here, you could get a couple of rotation here, a little, here and there, just enough to whip out one tornado or two, you know what I mean, a little bit on the lower end. They usually don't last long. They're brief spin-up tornadoes or isolated tornadoes. That could be possible, sure. You know what I mean? Get some damaging winds with that as well, but not looking at the big potential that might be down here. And that's what I'm kind of worried about. All right, so next frame, we get into the morning hours of the 7th. And this whole line of storms here is just kind of ripping through Missouri. You can see that there. A little bit of bowing structures that the GFS is already picking up in some of these storms. So damaging winds is definitely going to be really the primary threat going across these storms here. Where you get that sharp edge of squall line here, just this sharp edge. You can see those bowing structures that's in this right now. The GFS is picking this up this far out. All right, so with those bowing structures usually ahead of that line, just ahead of it, about a mile or two ahead of that line of storms as it moves into the area right there, those damaging winds are going to start to kind of gust in. It's a lot of straight line wind damage usually when it does come in like that. Those winds could be anywhere to 50 to 60 knots, or 55 to 60 miles an hour, and maybe even more in some cases. We're going to have to see exactly what the wind does a little bit closer to the event, but I think it's going to be a little bit unpredictable right now. There's going to be a lot of variables to it, but you could get a good 55, 60 mile an hour wind with this. All right, so that threat continues. The cap breaks a little bit. It's a little bit of a wide break in the cap, but you can see all that moisture that's going on in the area. All right, so then you get this whole squall line of storms right here. Could get some embedded cells. Just the way that this is so choppy like that, and just kind of looks blobby like that, that tells me that there could be some embedded cells in here. All right, so if there is some embedded cells in here, you might have some hidden kind of embedded supercells in here already rotating by the time it gets into Arkansas at this point. And then we do have that tornado risk kind of lingering over there now. Right now, it looks like kind of a lower end tornado risk, but it doesn't look like a huge tornado risk, but that could change. Because I think that the GFS this far out, it doesn't really take into consideration the advection that's going to be going on in this area. And I'm going to show you that advection right now. All right, so first of all, the one thing that I was looking at was wind. All right, wind speed, we're looking at the 4th right now, March 4th. So you can see that wind shear that's kind of gusting up into those northern areas here. Moving into that area, those higher indices where that purple is coming into that. All right, we get into the 6th. You can see how the jet is kind of wavering. And that's going to be, that front that's going to be kind of moving into that area where it's going to be those cold temperatures behind that front. Moving in with those storms. All right, so we're looking at throughout the day on the 7th. You can see that wind that's blowing in there. And that is going to be attributed with those westerlies, like I was telling you. This is the evening hours of the 6th going into the overnight hours. There's those westerlies that are pushing that storm into the area right there. So that tells me I'm going to have westerly west-southwest winds moving with those storms all the way up into the 8th. You know what I mean? When it's coming through here, we got west southwest storms. This is upper dynamics. So, all right. So lower dynamics. I was going to show you dew point, precipitation, moisture. I'm trying to look at yes here to me. Okay, there we go. All right, that's what I was looking at, looking for there. All right, so you can see these wet sectors right here already in the 60s and mid 50s, the 60s already in some of that moisture. So we already have a wet sector. That's the thing. You can see the front here. You can see that that low pressure system that's right here. A little bit of that land cyclone that's moving into that area. You can see that kind of rotation there as it's kind of continuing along. But you can see what I mean. You can already see that advection. This is all it shows. This shows wind direction. You can see these little wind barbs in here, and that shows the wind direction. You know what I mean? So as we're moving closer to the 7th, we're looking at the 5th right now, 7 p.m., the 6th, 1 a.m., and that advection is already there. Look at that. We're already looking at 60s in dew points in this area. Those wind barbs moving up from the south, and that advection is thickening in that area at 7 p.m. on the 6th. And into the 7th, into the early morning hours, we're looking at 60s to mid 60s in dew points. So we have some thick advection that's moving up from the south in there. And the wind barbs are moving up from the south. So I have southerly flow and I have westerly flow. So what does that mean? We're going to get some rotation. You know what I mean? So we have south winds, we got southwest winds coming in. You got two directional wind shears that are moving into this area because of this warm advection that's going in here. The cold front behind it moving and pushing this storm along into the 8th. All right, and after we get to, really when we get, it looks like for right now, when we get to those evening hours of the 7th, it seems like the storm kind of dies off. It starts to dissipate and lose its fire a little bit here. You know what I mean? So that's a good thing. It starts to kind of downplay, lose its power. So that overnight period of the 6th into the 7th, and the early mornings primarily of the 7th, is what I see right now is where the biggest threat is at. All right, so especially with this advection that's moving into this area, this is really going to ramp those storms up. And that's why I think the GFS is not really anticipating that threat accurately right now, because it's not considering this warm advection moving up into that area where you're going to get that boost in moisture, you're going to get that boost in heat, you're going to get additional wind shear from the south moving up from the Gulf of Mexico, which is going to flush all that heat and moisture in this area. And it's going to be one of those situations throwing gasoline on a fire. So as we get closer to the event, I'm going to keep checking on this to see how many changes go through this and give you guys updates on this storm as it as we get closer to it. All right. The other thing too, let's look at temperature advection. Yeah. So this is kind of what I was talking about here. You can see that's 07 a.m. It doesn't really, this is kind of harder for everybody to anticipate, but you can see these purple areas here where that advection is kind of coming into that area. You got surface vortice that's in this area. That's a thing. All right, so the surface vortice, you can see that multilinear surface vortice that's going on, and that vortice moving into the area on the 7th, and it gets that darker red areas right here. This is a little bit lower on the spectrum in the atmosphere, so you can see those areas where that surface vortice is definitely there, and that's really the biggest issue. 850 millibar. You got the so you can see these lines where that surface vortice is pretty thick, especially moving across the Arkansas region, where you could see some of these higher indices of surface vortice just kind of ripping through with that line of storms. That whole line of storms by this time is going to be right here. You know what I mean? So that surface vortice is pretty much right on top of it. You can see that thing really boosting up over Arkansas, getting those deep reds in there over Arkansas there. So we're definitely going to have enough spin up in the atmosphere to really get some tornadoes possibly. It definitely could be possible. All right, so, and this is just that, I don't think that this is going to show you too much here because of the way it is, but those darker indices of wind. I just look at so much stuff with height falls and wind here. This is the height fall with the wind shear, and you can see it really popping up. that front here behind it, and I'm moving up through Arkansas, and it's going to be ripping through the Northeast. But then, you know what I mean, eventually dissipates as it moves east. So that's why throughout the day of the 7th, this is kind of like a 12-hour kind of change here, where we're getting 1 a.m. to 7 a.m., 1 p.m. Well, not 12 hour, a couple hours, you know what I mean, overlay. But yeah, definitely. But you can see how it just kind of, it's going to dissipate and move out further to the east, move off to the coast. All right, so I just wanted to show you a couple of different things with that. So definitely on the 6th overnight period to the 7th, early morning hours of the 7th, definitely be ready for that time. Some severe storms are probably going to come out of this. But I'm going to keep an eye on this, make another video as we get, I'm going to probably make several videos actually as we get closer to the event with the updated information that I got. But I wanted everybody to be ready for this event because right now it looks kind of bad. You know what I mean? It doesn't look horrible. We got low-end tornado threats pretty much all throughout this region. But as we get closer, that threat could go up. That risk level could go up. And this whole structure could change by that time. So once we get about 3 days out from this event, we'll be able to look at the high-res model, the FV3 model, and things like that. We'll get some very accurate information from that, but not until about 3 days out from the actual event are we going to look at those models accurately. All right, so definitely be on your guard for that time and make sure that you have your family ready and your plan in place and everything ready to go for that time. I'm trying to just give everybody enough time to prepare, let you know that it's coming. All right, so thank you very much for watching, and I hope everybody stays safe and enjoy your week. And enjoy that time with the kids going back to school. And, you know, I know everybody's back to work and everything like that, but try to enjoy it. All right, thanks again. Stay safe.